Hi everybody, my name is Jim Young, CEO and co-founder of Realcomm, and I just got to say we've had a phenomenal day here at Cortec, and I am very fortunate to be sitting here with three gentlemen who I've known for quite some time, excluding Emmanuel, who I recently met. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a conversation pretty similar to the one we had today that talks about the use of technology, automation, and innovation in the corporate real estate world. And after you hear their stories, you hear the things they've accomplished, their visions for the future, I think you're going to agree that we have three of probably some of the smartest people in the world on this topic. So with that, I'd like to introduce Emmanuel Daniel from Microsoft, Matthew Montanes from JPMorgan, and Paul Maximuk from Ford Motor. You really can go all over the board when you talk about technology and buildings. You could start with the real estate information management side. How do I manage my leases? How do I know where my people are sitting? All the data that comes with managing large portfolios. How many maintenance calls did I get? Then you go into the second bucket and we can talk about smart buildings, right? Plugging everything into a network, light bulbs, access, parking gates, drinking fountains. And then the last is the experience side, which is getting a lot of play these days, right? I want to go someplace, I want to have an experience. Obviously, technology can play a big role in that, right? So if you bundle all three of those together, you have a building or buildings that look quite different than what we've built for the last 50 years. Agreed?
Yep, absolutely.
So what I'd like you to do is just talk a little bit about your role at Microsoft and what they've challenged you to do. We'll go down the line, and then I'm just going to start throwing some questions at you.
Great. So I'm part of the Applied Innovation and Incubation team at Microsoft. I was actually brought in to help our real estate and security team build and roll out a campus that is secure, sustainable, connected, and accessible. So what that basically means is, what is our strategy going to look like for this campus? What is this campus going to mean in terms of the experiences that we would provide? And why would this be an amazing place for people to come and work, right? That's what I was brought in to do.
Now you came via Singapore, and as I understand, you had a lot of input, and your DNA is all over a really interesting building in Sharjah called BIHA headquarters. Can you give us a little background on that?
Sure. Before I came over to work on the campus transformation in Redmond, I used to manage smart buildings for Asia and MEA for Microsoft. And in that role, I got the opportunity to work on the BIA building, which is out of Sharjah, UAE. And when we started working with them, I got engaged with them, their leadership, and we started to figure out what is the smartest building mean for them? What are the experiences they would like to have? And eventually, BIA was put across as the first AI-enabled building in terms of saying, if the building has a character, has a life of its own, how would the building take care of the tenants inside it? And that's what the BIA building is all about.
And what's really interesting is your perspective starts in Singapore, touches the Middle East, and now, so you're going to see and bring a lot of different ideas and technologies into a building that's really going to have an international feel.
And I think the benefit of that is if you bring a global perspective, you can truly be diverse and inclusive because you're able to bring in different types of experiences that different people want to feel welcomed in a space that they're working in. And I think that really gives me the advantage to do that, working in Asia, working in the Middle East, and now coming and working out of Redmond.
Oh, exciting. I mean, I've seen your video. You flattened how many buildings? 16? Or
14 buildings.
14 buildings, you're going to bulldoze them, and you got a clean palette.
Yep.
That's exciting.
Thank you.
Matthew, so you've got a little headquarter building going up in New York. Small, right? And you're on that team that's going to make this building different, right? So can you give us a little background on the decision to knock down the old headquarters and put up the new one and what that means?
Yeah, so that's part of my current assignment, is to essentially help lead the new building development project from a property and facilities management perspective. Basically ensure that whatever we develop is an operator can actually run with. But I would say that, historically, and you kind of said it, buildings were built, whatever, 50, 60 years ago, and they're no longer the same types of buildings that we need to occupy today. And I think our firm did a very good job of recognizing that at their single most important asset, our company headquarters, It was originally designed for 3,500 employees. It actually was occupying greater than 6,000, and it was at 1.5 million square feet. But now we've made a conscious decision to demolish that building and to build a building, almost double its size, 2.5 million square feet for 15,000 occupants in the same footprint, thanks to some new, zoning requirements that are available. So that was part of the strategy with our new building, and I think part of, the decision was also recognition that elevators needed to operate differently. We needed more restrooms. We needed, a better HVAC equipment that could handle the too hot, too cold complaints that would be coming in, and that's essentially where, me and my team are integrated, 5 years before this building gets built, to ensure that the operator can actually run the building.
And as we're all going to talk about in a second, building a project of that size and scope, knowing conceptually that the technology is coming, but also understanding it's not quite here yet. And we'll talk about maybe some specific technologies like 5G, for example. You have to create a vision, but you kind of probably have to reset every 6 months to say, okay, is that feasible, or did things change, or did it accelerate faster? So I think one of the interesting things with all of you is given the scope of your projects and the time frames, real estate has moved at a certain pace and technology is moving at a much faster pace. How do you synchronize those two? How do you calibrate those two different cadences, if you will, of two different industries? So that, again, given the size and scope of these projects, it's going to be really interesting to have this discussion. So we have a technology company, a finance company, and of course we have an automobile company, which is really great. I don't know if we plan to do that, to have this diversity, but it's really, because if it was all tech companies, it'd say, oh yeah, just the tech companies are doing this, but this is a really nice balance, right? So tell us a little bit about the journey at Ford.
Was a lot of buildings that were built in the 50s that have exceeded their end of life expectancy. When the master planners looked at this, they evaluated condition of the facilities, looked at the vision of Ford Motor Company, and basically with the input of our executive leadership, they decided to start with a campus transformation at our product development campus. So looking at a product development building right now, our big project is going to be the hub. The hub is going to replace the existing product development center that is where most people are familiar with the clay model studios and the design, and that all happens there. So what's interesting about the project is that the project requires demoing part of the existing facility, so we have to relocate individuals.
Sounds a familiar theme.
Yeah, we have to relocate individuals, tear down part of that building, keep the rest of the building habitable so the workplace is not interrupted, build the new facility, the first phase of it, and then move the people into the new facility, move the people out from the second phase of the existing building, bring them into another temporary location, demo that portion, and build the rest of that facility.
We could have a whole separate conversation on demo and relocation because it's fascinating.
Right.
There's not a lot of technology. Oh, maybe there is, but it is interesting though that you guys are all dealing with, we're just knocking these buildings down.
Right.
Redmond, Manhattan, and Detroit or Dearborn, right? And now that you've got this clean slate, now you can really start to rethink this, and that's interesting. One final question for you. The inspiration, for all the things that you're going to be doing at the new headquarters, where did it come from?
I think a lot of the inspiration on the technology side was the time the teams went to various technology companies to see what technology is out there to sustain within our organization. Obviously, we're a diverse organization. We have property management, we lease facilities, we have product development, at our R&E campus, and then we have manufacturing facilities. All are different type of requirements for Ford.
Well, and if you think about it, like in any other competitive marketplace, let's use automobiles. So you come out with a model. One of the first people to buy your car is your competitors, right? They get it, they put it into their labs, and kind of rip it apart. So that means they're looking at the market, kind of following the trends. You know, we saw this with the advent of the electric car. Where did you go? Well, obviously you've traveled, but I mean, are there areas around the globe that you drew some inspiration from?
So for us, I'll probably say, for me, inspiration came from all the countries and customers that I've met, spoken about. All the people who are passionate about building buildings that is going to offer a unique experience is one source of the inspiration. And the other part of it, and it's a large part of it, Microsoft is going through a transformation themselves, where the importance of people and culture starts to come in. So using the people, understanding their needs, and using that as a source of inspiration to design the campus, it had a major role or contributing factor to where we're headed in.
Right. Matthew, how about you? I mean, was there a particular building or a series of buildings or combinations of buildings?
Yeah, I want to say that the decision, or this initiative is really driven top bottom, which obviously it is, but it was also, I think a better way to describe it was driven outside in and inside out, where we just felt like we've overstayed our welcome within our own home, and it was time to just reinvest. And we don't make big financial decisions like these unless they financially make sense for the firm and for our employees. So it seemed to have checked a lot of the requirements that met our long-term needs.
So in the old days, if we were doing this 20 years ago, you'd be saying 250, 300 square foot for executives with corner offices, and these are where the cubes are going, and they're 125, 150 feet, whatever. A lot has changed in 20 years. So we had, the concept of co-working space as a service, that kind of, it's not a new idea. It actually started with Regis years ago, but WeWork and others have made it very popular, right? And they've shined a light on densification and using space, with a higher concentration of people. What is the, and you have to project out 3 to 5 years, okay? What does the workplace look like in 5 years? Because I think we're right in the middle of a major change, right? And I don't think we're going back. I don't think big offices that aren't connected don't offer experience. So is it an open space? How much technology is in it? Can you give us an idea of some of the things that you'll find in these new workplaces? We'll start with you.
Yeah. So if you look at workspaces of the future, in the past, they were designed to meet a specific need, right? And the need was to have a place where you can sit down, you can start to work. As people evolved, the collaboration models changed. People no longer needed a specific space, they needed multiple types of spaces to be able to draw out their productivity. They also needed multiple points to have interactions or collisions so that they could meet other people, discuss, share their ideas with, get that validated. And that's how space has evolved. It's no longer confined space. You should be able to find any type of space which allows you to achieve the objectives that you want. If it has to be a large group meeting, yes. If it has to be individual focus time, yes. If it has to be, smaller group meetings, one-on-one meetings, finding that space that works for you. So the space today, I would say, in a building is transforming where the space will adapt to the needs of the users. And that's where we are headed to.
Is there anything specific that have you guys nailed down what the space looks like?
I think I agree with a lot of what Emmanuel just said, but I think it tends to align with who the end user is and what the space type is. So what types of clients are you hosting? That could depend on the space configuration. Who are the employees that actually reside in those locations? Do you have traders? Do you have wealth managers? Do you have executives? That all takes into account. The back of house program is incredibly challenging to get right, because no matter what you think about what the front of house must look like, you have to set up the back of house in the same, with the same rigor, with the same discipline, because they're the ones who are essentially going to respond to the requests and the services that are required to make the system hum.
That's a good segue, actually. You've impressed me for a long time on your understanding of how complex the infrastructure and everything that attaches to it is.
Right.
Give us a little background on where that journey started. How did you crawl under desks and look at every piece of equipment? How did you come up with this complex network topology that I've never really seen too many places.
So I think, Jim, the important thing is, before you go down any journey, you need to know where you're starting from. We conducted a lot of surveys, right? We looked at the manufacturing facilities, we looked at our commercial buildings, worked with some of the vendors that we've worked with in the past and what they had looked and installed within our facilities. And then we basically built that strategy off of there. So we looked at all the possible connections that we could possibly have within our organization globally, because it's different by region sometimes, and said, you know what, this is what's going on, let's get it on paper so everybody understands it, right? Because it's pretty hard to visualize something unless you have a document that can show you that or a video that can show you that, right? So we went down that path, documented what was there at a current state, and looked at that and said, where do we want to go in the future? And what we saw were a lot of connected devices that were serial connections, some wireless solutions that really are not going to be sustainable for us long term. And we basically said, this is where we start, this is where we want to go to at the next level.
Yeah. Vision assessment.
It's a vision assessment.
Yeah, yeah.
And quite honestly, when you look at those things, you say, hey, if we don't know what the technology is going to be, we're going to have to go to this next level. We know that IP infrastructure is going to be there long term.
So let's pick a topic that might be a little uncomfortable, and that's the challenges, right? So this is all great, and we're trying to transform how the spaces look and what offices look like and workplaces look like, but it's not easy. I've been at this for a long time, and I personally thought it would have happened faster. Let's start back with you, Paul. What if some of the roadblocks? What have you hit? Is it technology? Is it organizational? Is it executive support? What have you hit?
So I think the executive support is there. I mean, a lot of the stuff we did, as I mentioned, we did proof of concepts. It's a great proving ground to say these technologies work in theory. Are they sustainable? We don't know that yet, but we know that it's going to move in the needle where we want to go, right? So when we started doing that, we brought in not only the business side leadership, but the IT leadership as well. And once that buy-in is there with those two teams, it allows you to go to the next level. And I think one of the things we learned early on is that a lot of the solution providers right now are scalable only to a specific small deployment. I can't put in a lot of these wireless solutions that are operated off a battery or whatever the power source is. I need to be able to have something that's going to be sustainable. I can't hire somebody to come in and change batteries and that's what they do for their life. Right. I guarantee you, if you deploy that type of technology, when the battery dies, that technology's dead, right?
Yeah. Something as simple as a battery, but a power source is important.
Right. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. How about in your journey so far?
So I would say part of the challenge is you have very good people surrounded by some of the best in the industry, but sometimes everybody's priorities are misaligned, and you have to continue the discussion, continue to educate what the strategy, what the vision is, to make sure that those priorities are constantly achieved. And I'll take it for an example. Like, I work within a function that strives on standardization, where there are other functions that strive on integration, and those two features can sometimes collide and can be two things that are very difficult to achieve at the same time. And I think that is, it's okay to not be perfect in either standardization or integration, so long as you have the conversation and are upfront about those topics, and just the whole team has a conscious view into those decisions.
Yeah, and I would say what I've seen is the organizational alignment is by far the number one issue, because in our world, you dug a hole, you poured concrete, you put up steel, you finished it off, and people moved in. That's 50, 70 years of culture, right? Now we're saying, wait a minute, people are working different, they're playing and shopping different, and that's going to impact the space. I think we're fighting against 50 to 75 years of doing something the same way, right? And and it's that alignment of saying, okay, I need to take you over here and show you how it could be done differently. But that's time consuming, right? There's a lot of education that takes place.
But look how things have changed. Bring somebody coming into the workforce now. If you showed them some of the things that we've done in the past, they'd look at you like, are you
You're
crazy? How did you
I still
survive?
say, I walk in a place, are you kidding me?
I mean, nowadays,
well-
it's mobile devices. That's how they manage
Okay,
their life.
you
right?
brought up a good point. So we've been doing this for conference for a long time. We're talking about all these innovative ideas, and I can't tell you the number of buildings I go to in tier 1 cities in brand new projects that my cell phone doesn't work. Or I have one bar and I'm at the window trying to find a signal, right?
Yeah.
How does that still happen in 2019? I mean, that's a simple question,
Yeah.
right? I mean, why do we still go to parking garages and get paper tickets? You know, why do we walk around facilities with hole punches every month and check on fire extinguishers?
Exactly.
These are not, we're not going to Mars, these are simple.
Right.
So I think it must be the cultural alignment, because we certainly can find the technology,
Yep, absolutely.
even the batteries. We'll figure out a way to get your fire extinguishers powered, right, without having to run. Why are people resisting?
So, you know, if you look at it, the biggest success and challenge are people. And the reason I would say that is because people need connections. They need interactions, right? We are creatures of community.
Yep.
To be able to aid that, technology has to serve the purpose of accelerating that connection or making them feel better and delighting them. If technology does not do that, okay, the tendency is to go back to the habitual ways okay, of doing how they did things before. And that's where the challenge comes in.
This all can really play part in disrupting communities.
Yes.
That guy that goes
Yeah.
around and punches fire extinguishers every month, that's his life. That's his livelihood. That's what he's done forever.
Right, yeah.
Maybe he's the guy who changes your batteries in the future, right? but you're disrupting a culture.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll probably say, you know, we are disrupting a culture for the betterment of a new culture.
Right.
We are changing the way we work so that, you know, we can do better things with our time and learn much more than what we were able to used to. If we take the example of, you said, of the guy punching the tickets as he moves around, could he not learn something better and do something more with
I
his
agree.
time if that particular task had to be automated or enhanced?
Well, history shows we went from agrarian to industrial to
Yeah.
pre-information. I think we're probably end of pre-information and actually entering the information age. People
Right.
have been talking about the internet age. I actually think we're just there, okay? Because the process has been, you know, mainframe computer, only, you know, people with a lot of money could compute.
Right.
Mini computers distributed into departments, PCs put in front of every single one of us, mobile communications sent us out on our way with semi-smart devices, but this wide area network called the internet, first time in the history of the planet that we're all now on one standardized communication network.
Yeah.
Now we're getting ready to attach all the devices in the ceilings and the walls. Okay, and so I actually think we're just coming into the information age, but it changes everything. You know, from the way you know your car's working or not, or whether or not you can find a parking space at work, and it's different. And I think that's what we're up against. Frankly, I think it's this culture change. Now, interesting. You know, in other parts around the world where they're not disrupting anything. They went from very third world type situations sometimes, and it's particularly true in Dubai, right, in UAE. I mean, Sheikh Mohammed says we're not going to be a 21st century country. We're going to be a 22nd, right? So they don't have that culture.
Yeah.
You know, I've been in India, and my Sprint cell phone worked better in Mumbai than it does in San Diego. Please tell me why. Because they didn't have the wired infrastructure, they went right to wireless. Right? So do you think that's holding us back in the States a little bit? The fact that we do have history, 50, 75, 100 years of business history. Is it holding us back, do you think?
I would say to some extent, because we'd like to do things that we're already comfortable with.
Right.
Hence the appetite to try something new and to go through that change is a big resisting factor for humans.
Right.
So those who didn't have it will always get onto the latest and greatest technology that you would have. But someone that's used to doing things conventionally, why would you want to change?
Right. Well, we talked a little bit about in China and some of the corporate headquarters over there, and the reporter said in order to get to past the first or the second floor, you needed facial recognition. I mean, does the day come when we use facial recognition in our lobbies to get control of elevators?
Yeah.
I would say it's a very good chance of some type of biometric interface.
Right. And culturally, we're going to learn to adapt with that. I mean, I hope. I mean, at some point.
I think we already have
Yeah.
to some extent, right? Social media, I think it's just the persona of it's me now and you're connecting me to something specific that really changes the thought process.
We have had this conversation. I'm going to disagree a little bit on this. I think the privacy issue still has some, and that's maybe a question I'd like to pivot to. Okay, so yes, we've given up a lot, but with what's possible, are we willing to give all of it up? So we talked about this on the panel this morning. How important is privacy in your strategy in the new campus?
So privacy is an extremely important area. I would probably say it is one of the foundational pillars of the experiences that we are designing. And you know, we've discovered people will give up something if there is value to it.
Right.
If I have to use facial recognition to get access into the building because it makes my way of coming in, going out, getting facilities, getting things done easier, I'd be happy to part with it with the guarantee that that information is not going to be misused for anything else.
Right.
Now,
With a guarantee.
Right.
Right.
Now, hence privacy becomes fundamental. If I give an experience and I cannot guarantee the integrity of the data that's being captured and the privacy of the information that is being captured, there is no motivation for anybody to use that service and technology gets defeated.
So while we're demonstrating our civil liberties and our rights, because that's what we are, there are other regions around the world that are going to just go much faster because they're not having this debate.
The biggest question that needs to be answered is where's that data going? Is it contained within your infrastructure and is never shared? That's one case I think a lot of people could buy into to use these different types of technologies. But if it's going to be shared with government agencies or other companies, there I see a huge issue. And quite honestly, Ford has IT policies that really minimize the amount of stuff that goes out in the cloud because of the restrictions of what type of data is going to go out there and what are you doing with the data. If you're doing type of controls where you're turning something on and off, you really don't want to have that control from the cloud.
So in your new project, right, you got this new skyscraper. It's going to be one of the nicest projects, if not the nicest one in Manhattan. You overlay this technical net called a network. You start connecting all these devices. Your employees in 3 to 5 years are coming in with instrumented like, some future superhero. Is privacy in your conversations right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Privacy and security, and security has taken on, whether it's cybersecurity, physical security, it's all a relative discussion. And frankly, it's as long as you're getting the foundation right that can accept some of these challenges, because you're never going to solve for them today, but you just have to be ready for what's to come. And I think privacy is one of those things you just can't take lightly.
Correct, yeah.
But
in
as
any project.
global multinationals, you've got assets all over the world. What happens when you have an asset in another part of the world where their privacy perspective is different? Does that misalign your strategy, or do you have two strategies?
Well, that's goes back to my earlier point. I think you have to be comfortable with the fact that not everything is going to be 100% the same. Right. You mentioned it earlier today. The airports have different, rules, and obviously countries or states have different regulations, and I think it applies to corporate occupiers too. And even as an employee, you also have to be comfortable that your experience will not be the same in every single building. Right. Can't expect it to be, because it's not feasible.
Right. I think we're kind of running out of time, so I just got one more quick question. If somebody's doing a small, medium, large new project or even a major retrofit in a corporate real estate portfolio, is it worth their time to jump on an airplane and go see the best building in the UK, the best building in Japan, the best building in China, the best building in India, the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's worthwhile for people to do that?
I would definitely say it is.
No.
Absolutely.
Matthew, how about
Yeah, I think you'd be foolish not to go out, feel it, touch it, see it, interact with the end users who live in it every single day. I think that's great advice, and you know, I think all three of us have.
Yeah, I would imagine you
Would
guys,
agree.
Paul, same thing?
Same thing. I mean, you're a global organization. You're
Yeah.
touching many different cultures. You need to bring something to the table for everyone, right? It can't just be specific to one region.
Awesome. Guys, thank you very much. This has been a great conversation.